The One Piece manga finally showed us the strongest crew in One Piece history, as the Rocks crew finally takes the stage for the very first time in the story on God Valley at the very same time as a young Roger with Luffy's Straw Hat. And just wow. I mean, after so many years of talking about this legendary pirate crew, we're finally seeing them all together here at God Valley. And even though Oda is still teasing us by not fully showing Rocksteady Zebek's full appearance, it is still amazing to see all of these insane members of his crew, including some that we didn't even expect. But before we can get into any other of these crazy reveals, it does seem like the Rocks' true objective here was to obtain these crazy devil fruits that the Celestial Dragons are offering up as prizes for their really insane and hideous slave hunting tournaments. We can tell because we do see Big Mom here almost immediately going after the devil fruits and capture what will later be Kaido's. But of course, it's also very interesting to speculate about what other fruits could have been in these treasure chests, and of course we do know that Kuma's fruit was another of the 6, but what about the remaining 4? And there are actually a few really fascinating possibilities here based on other characters that are present at God Valley. For example, we never knew for sure when Whitebeard here ate his tremor fruit, so I could very easily imagine that Whitebeard also got his fruit from one of these prize chests. And another really interesting possibility is the float fruit, because in case you forgot, this is the golden lion Shiki here, who I think for the first time actually does something in the official manga, and at some time in the past he ate this devil fruit, which allows him to make anything float in the air by touching it, including himself. Then another random but super exciting option is that some sort of wind or weather devil fruit was in there as well, because while Luffy's father Monkey D. Dragon has not shown up yet, I do wonder if his wind related powers could also be related to one of the devil fruits in these chests, because he should be showing up on God Valley as well. And on top of all that, one fruit that I saw people speculating about is the Nika fruit, but honestly I don't think that the Nika fruit is that strong of a possibility here, since the Gorosei always wanted to get their hands on it but never have seemed to be able to. Nonetheless, I even think that there's a real possibility that Rocks already has eaten the Nika fruit at this point, since he was able to bring together such a stupidly powerful crew very similar to Luffy. But even if that's not the case, another very likely option for one of the treasure chests is of course the darkness fruit, which just makes perfect sense to be one of the prizes here. I mean, it is the ultimate Logia devil fruit, and I've even made a whole theory in the past that Rocks was after the darkness fruit in the first place. Plus, if you want even more evidence, we already do know that Blackbeard was greatly influenced by Rocks with his ship name and his goal to rule the world, so wouldn't it really make sense that Rocks wanted the darkness fruit as well, but was somehow stopped from eating it, which left Blackbeard to fulfill that desire later on? I mean, there's a lot more to this, and it does make a lot of sense to me at least. But if the devil fruits here weren't actually Rocks' true goal, let's speculate, then what else might have been? Well, by looking at the main goal of taking over the world, at least according to Sengoku, a pretty easy, straightforward answer here would be that he just wanted to come out and wipe out all of the world nobles, which honestly, yeah, please do that. I mean, the world would be a much better place without them, but if that actually were to be his real goal here, then we have to ask ourselves once again, why would Roger try to stop him here? In fact, they actually do have a short but very interesting exchange in this chapter, Rocks talking for the first time, where Roger tells Rocks to stop something, but then Rocks tells Roger to stay out of his way, which honestly is not a lot to go off of, but it clearly shows that Roger knew what Rocks was doing and didn't like it. And since we do know that Roger was a good guy, probably at least, it's kind of hard to believe that Rocks was doing anything positive like wanting to free the slaves, but then again, all we know about him comes from Sengoku, so who knows? And while that's basically all we got in this chapter for these two legends, the reveal of Rocks' crew gave us some truly shocking new information, because out of all of the people in the world who we have been speculating for years that they might be on the crew, I mean, who would have guessed Elder Nyan, who was the Empress of Amazon Lily a few generations ago, that she was actually part of this world-conquering, unbeatable crew? Like, seriously, what is she doing here? She never kind of gave off that super powerful vibe when she let Boa Hancock literally throw her out of a window. So did she have some other role or purpose in the crew, or was she just really playing old lady there? I mean, it's pretty easy to imagine that she was actually in love with someone on this crew, since that is not only a common theme for the Empresses, but she even mentions that in the story itself. But was it Rox or someone else in the crew? And while we're talking about the former Empress here, this actually makes me wonder if all the former Empresses of Amazon Lily fell in love with powerful pirates. For example, Elder Nyan possibly loved someone on Rox's crew, Shaki here fell in love with Roger's right-hand man Rayleigh, and Boa, of course, is head over heels for Luffy. And there's actually one more Empress before Boa that we aren't currently aware of. And I mean, this might sound really crazy now, but I'm actually kind of wondering if it could be someone even like, you know, Makino from Luffy's hometown. I mean, was she the missing Empress who seems to be in a relationship with Shanks here? Which I do know, I mean, it sounds crazy, but who else fits the timeline and is in love with a super strong pirate? Well, checkmate. Anyways, we also got to see the young appearance of Miss Buckingham, who not surprisingly looks a lot like her clone Stussy. Which, you know, is always funny to me how some characters somehow shrink and get super wrinkly with age. But to be fair, she definitely has something going on here with Whitebeard, as we even see her sitting on his shoulders. And I mean, who knows? This chapter really seems to suggest that maybe they actually did get it on, and this guy really is Whitebeard's son here. And then we have one other really interesting member here who is either Silver Axe or Wang Zi, and they do look somewhat like Kaido does, I guess. There's also John, who we actually see chugging down some booze, just like we saw his zombie do on Thriller Bark. And of course, we also have a young Shiki, who looks as he did before chopping off his legs in Impel Down. And man, I mean, I'm really wishing that we get to see Rox, because I'm actually kind of worried that we aren't going to come back to God Valley for quite some time here, maybe until Roger's flashback or Blackbeard's flashback. It's gonna be a while. But before we get more into the future, we of course have to discuss this young Chad right here, Roger, in all of his Straw Hat glory. And man, I'm getting goosebumps just seeing him like this, basically looking like an adult version of Luffy, if we're being honest. And of course, joining the fight with him, we have his entire crew, including his right-hand man Rayleigh, as well as his other top commander, Scopper Gaban. And then there's like some other members that we actually do know the names of. And I'm just excited to finally see all of them in their prime years. I mean, clearly they're going to oppose Rox and his crew, but what else is going on this island and in this incident? I bet there's stuff happening that we just have no idea yet what's going on there. And I actually think that it's pretty likely as well that the Holy Knights might join into this battle as well. And we even met a few more of them in this chapter. Like this one who looks like some sort of royalty, this young woman, this gas mask wearing dude who actually looks a lot like that orphan back from Big Mom's flashback, plus a younger looking girl with a hat covering her eyes, which means we have to ask just how strong are all of these fighters? Because I really want them all to be able to put up a real fight here, and I definitely think that Garling is a top tier character, but can they really match up with some of the confirmed strongest characters to ever live in One Piece? For now, I'm a little bit skeptical, but the battle isn't complete, of course, without one more hero and his entourage, and that's of course Monkey D. Garp, who apparently was on vacation here before being told by a young Kong who hasn't appeared in the story in like forever as well, that stuff is about to go down on God Valley. And of course, Garp was not about to miss out on that. Which honestly, this makes me feel a lot better about Garp's role in all of this, because he clearly wasn't already protecting the Celestial Dragons at this really morbid tournament that they're having here. I mean, if he was there and letting that stuff happen, it just would not feel right to me. But that's not the case, of course, because it does seem like he's just showing up at the same time as Roger and Rox and will participate in the battle as well. In fact, it does seem more likely that this event is what caused Garp's disgust for the Celestial Dragons in the first place. And one big question, of course, is what will happen after the battle? Clearly, we do know that Rox was defeated, but I do have to wonder if that is truly the case here. Now, if you've watched any other One Piece videos, you'll probably know that there are heaps and heaps of theories out there that Rox somehow is still alive, maybe living inside of Blackbeard or some other shape or form. So I do know I've said this like 3 times already, but I really can't wait to see what happens with this battle, the devil fruits, and even the slaves here. But speaking of those slaves, I don't think anyone was expecting to see what happened in this chapter with Kuma and the rest of the young revolutionaries. At least not this soon, because in this chapter we actually learned that the 3 young kids' escape plan was to actually steal these devil fruits that the celestial dragons have been offering as a reward for their twisted hunting competition. And despite all the insanely powerful fighters accumulating on this island, the kids basically succeeded, if we're being honest. I mean, yeah, 𝚻𝚐𝚐 did get stopped in the end by a young Big Mom before they could run away with Kaido's dragon fruit, and of course 𝚻𝚐𝚐 isn't winning a fight against an emperor, and she did steal the fruit from him, which confirms what we were actually told during Wano, that Big Mom did get this particular fruit at God Valley. However, that setback didn't stop Kuma from stealing and eating the paw fruit just in time, which luckily for them is the perfect ability to allow all these 3 kids to escape. So I guess really good job choosing the right fruit there, Kuma. However, before they can actually leave, they're confronted by Saint Saturn here, who once again shows off his incredible flames and authority here, and what we do think is Haki lightning, even in his human form. It's really hard to say what it's supposed to be in this chapter, but seriously, I'm thinking more and more that these Gorosei are not just supremely powerful, even though they're total scumbags, but they might not even be human in that sense. Again, one thing I keep saying over and over is that these might just be straight up devils or demons. Maybe there's something else that have eaten a human devil fruit, kind of like Chopper. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. Maybe they are just devil fruits, but I kind of want to believe it's something cooler. And Kuma even kind of addresses this when he yells at Saturn that it isn't fair that the world nobles are born with such power and authority, but what's even crazier maybe is that Kuma says that he would free people if he had that same power as Saturn, and then Saturn says that that is exactly why people like him and his entire race must be erased. Like, seriously? I don't know if these Gorosei have just lived so long that they just think of people as objects or trash, but it's incredible that this is the Gorosei's true perspective. And really, so much for my old idea that I once had that the Gorosei might actually be decent people who kind of try their best to not let Imu destroy the world. I mean, after everything we've seen, they're just straight out evil. But right after this, Kuma actually uses his new powers to push himself, 𝚻𝚐𝚐, and Jinny all the way to his former home, the 𝚬𝚐𝚐 Kingdom, which is a bit unbelievable if you ask me, that he was able to be that accurate pushing across the world literally moments right after eating that devil fruit. But okay, I mean, I'll go along with it because this is a twist I personally wasn't expecting at all. I think most people were thinking that the slaves would spend at least a few chapters here, but this change is both super interesting and maybe a little bit disappointing. I mean, let me explain. Starting with the downside, it appears that this is the end of Kuma's involvement in God Valley, which more than likely means that we're going to have to wait even longer to see the real battle here. I mean, it makes sense though that we would continue with Kuma here, since this is after all his flashback, but still I wouldn't really be surprised if we would have to wait a long time until a full Roger flashback or something like that later on to really see the full scope of this legendary battle. But on the other hand, it's of course not all a disappointment though, because with Kuma now out of the battle, we do have to ask what happened to him, 𝚻𝚐𝚐, and most importantly Jinny. Because the 3 main things that we know about Kuma's story so far is that he will at some point need to become the ruler of the 𝚬𝚐𝚐 Kingdom, meet up with Luffy's father Dragon to found the revolutionary army, and become a warlord slash government puppet. Plus, somewhere in there, Bonnie is born as well, or maybe cloned. We'll talk more about that in just a minute, but I honestly don't know in what order all of these events will happen. In this chapter, it does seem like Kuma and Jinny are going to end up being in some sort of relationship and living peacefully in the 𝚬𝚐𝚐 Kingdom, but that obviously won't last forever, sadly. And actually, let's talk a little bit about Jinny though, because I personally am super curious to learn what actually happened to her in the end. But first we learned that Jinny is the reason that Roger and Rox came to God Valley in the first place, because not only is she really good at sneaking around, but she's also a genius when it comes to Dendenmushis. And so with these truly unique skill sets, she was able to transmit the celestial dragon's location out into the world, which does make me wonder if she was working for the pirates all along, or if this was just some sort of really random transmission that she just got really lucky the right people heard. But what's of course even more interesting from this chapter is that because it seems that she's settling down with Kuma, she, yes, is most likely Bonnie's mother, as most of you suggested in the last video, and honestly, she has been alive way longer than I originally thought. Like, I definitely thought that she would die at God Valley, but we have to ask the unfortunate question of how and when is she going to die? Probably not if, because mothers never make it long, because there's no sign that she is alive in the current story. For now though, she will have to be alive a little bit longer, at least luckily, until she can have their baby. Another really interesting possibility though is that at some point Kuma and Jinny meet a, at that point, much younger Vegapunk, and instead of Jinny being a mother, Vegapunk actually makes a clone using her DNA. So really, who knows at this point who Bonnie is really? We're gonna find out. And yet with all of this going on, I still get the feeling that there is so much more to Rox's story than just getting defeated here during this battle. I mean, this was literally the moment that reshaped the entire One Piece world, and surely Rox isn't just going to tap out after one fight, right? Plus, he and Roger were both part of the legendary D-Clan, and there are just so many crazy theories about his true goals, him living on, that honestly I wouldn't be surprised if Roger somehow ended up letting him live. If you want to know everything, and I mean everything that we do know so far about Rox 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐, then you can watch this video right here. Until then, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.